What happens when one of the most outspoken media personalities sits down with one of the most controversial figures in modern royalty? The answer is an interview that went so wrong it ended with a dramatic walkout that nobody saw coming. Before we get into this absolutely wild exchange, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me who you think was in the right here. Because trust me, you're going to have opinions. Now let's dive into what actually went down on The Daily Show. The studio audience was buzzing with anticipation as Jon Stewart settled into his chair behind the iconic desk. The energy was electric, the kind you only get when everyone knows they're about to witness something significant. Meghan Markle walked onto the set with her trademark confident stride, wearing an immaculate cream-colored pantsuit that practically glowed under the studio lights. The audience erupted into applause, a mix of genuine fans and curious onlookers who had been waiting to see how this conversation would unfold. Jon stood to greet her, his signature half-smile playing at the corners of his mouth. They shook hands, exchanged pleasantries, and Meghan took her seat across from him. The cameras rolled, the audience settled, and Jon leaned forward with that intense focus he's known for. "So, Meghan, thank you for being here," Jon began, his voice carrying that familiar blend of humor and seriousness. "I have to say, when your publicist reached out about doing this interview, I was intrigued. You've been fairly selective about where you sit down for conversations lately." Meghan smiled, adjusting herself in the chair with practiced ease. "Well, Jon, I've always appreciated your approach to conversations. You're not afraid to ask real questions, and I think that's what people deserve." "Authenticity, authenticity," Jon repeated, nodding slowly. "That's interesting you bring that up, because I think that's going to be a theme tonight. You know, I've been watching your journey. From actress to duchess to, well, whatever we're calling this current chapter, and I have to ask, do you ever feel like you're playing different roles depending on which audience you're speaking to?" The smile on Meghan's face flickered, just for a moment, but she recovered quickly. "I think that's a rather reductive way to look at someone's life. Jon, we all adapt to different situations. You're different on this show than you are at home with your family, I'm sure." "Absolutely," Jon agreed, leaning back in his chair. "But I'm not going on Oprah telling one story, then doing podcasts telling another story, then going to the United Nations with yet another narrative. See, the thing is, when you're a public figure by choice, and I emphasize by choice because you've had many opportunities to step back, and you haven't, people start to notice when the details don't quite line up." The audience went quiet. This was happening faster than anyone expected. Meghan's posture straightened, her media training kicking into high gear. "I think what you're describing as inconsistencies are actually just different aspects of a complex experience," Meghan said, her voice measured. "When you've lived through trauma, when you've faced the kind of institutional challenges I've faced, you process things over time. Details emerge. Understanding deepens." Sure, Jon said, but there was an edge to his tone now. "But we're not talking about processing trauma. We're talking about facts, basic facts. Like, and I'm just picking one example here, the whole situation with your wedding. In one interview, you talked about having a private ceremony 3 days before the public wedding. Just you, Harry, and the Archbishop. Very intimate, very secret. Then the Archbishop himself came out and said, that's not actually what happened. That what occurred was a rehearsal, not a legal ceremony. So which is it?" Meghan's jaw tightened. "I think the Archbishop was parsing words based on legal definitions. What Harry and I experienced was deeply personal and meaningful to us." "But you didn't say it was personally meaningful. You said you got married," Jon pressed. "You said you exchanged vows, that it was your actual wedding, and the big ceremony was just for spectacle. Those are your words. And when someone with actual knowledge of the situation says that's not accurate, it makes people wonder what else might not be accurate." "Jon, I came here thinking we were going to have a respectful conversation," Meghan said. And now there was a warning tone in her voice, not an interrogation. "This is a conversation," Jon replied calmly. "A conversation involves questions and answers. You've spent years now building a brand around your truth, your story, your narrative of being silenced. But here's what I'm struggling with. Every time someone asks you a difficult question or challenges any part of your story, suddenly you're being attacked. You're being silenced. You're being victimized all over again. At what point does accountability enter the equation?" The audience was dead silent now. A few people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This was not the softball interview anyone had expected. Meghan took a breath, visibly trying to maintain her composure. I have been accountable. I've been more scrutinized than perhaps any other woman in public life. Everything I do is picked apart, analyzed, criticized, scrutinized, yes, Jon acknowledged. But scrutiny isn't the same as accountability. Scrutiny is people watching what you do. Accountability is taking responsibility when things don't add up. And I've got to tell you, I've watched a lot of your interviews, read a lot of the coverage, and I keep seeing this pattern where you position yourself as this powerless figure while simultaneously wielding enormous influence and platform. That's not fair, Meghan shot back, her composure cracking slightly. What's not fair? Jon asked. The fact that I'm pointing it out, because here's the thing, you went on television and made very serious allegations about the royal family. Accusations of racism, of neglect, of causing you to have suicidal thoughts and denying you help. Those are massive claims. And when the family says, wait, some of this isn't quite how we remember it, or when staff members come forward with different accounts, you say they're lying. They're part of the machine. They're protecting the institution. But why is your word automatically true and everyone else's automatically false? Meghan stood up slightly in her chair, her hands gripping the armrests. Because I lived it, Jon. I was there. I experienced it. And the fact that you're sitting here suggesting I'm making things up is exactly the kind of gaslighting that I dealt with every single day in that institution. I'm not suggesting you're making things up, Jon said, his voice calm but firm. I'm suggesting that maybe your perception of events and the reality of events might not be identical. That maybe when you felt like something was racist, it might have actually been protocol. That maybe when you felt like you were being targeted, you might have actually just been in an environment with rules you didn't want to follow. I'm suggesting that your truth and the truth might be two different things. The tension in the studio was now palpable. Camera operators were glancing at each other, unsure if they should keep rolling or if someone was going to call cut. Meghan's eyes flashed with anger. So now, you're going to tell me what I experienced. You're going to sit there, someone who has never been a woman of color, walking into one of the most traditional, rigid institutions in the world, and tell me that I misunderstood my own life. Jon held up a hand. I'm not telling you what you experienced. I'm asking you to consider that your interpretation of what you experienced might be colored by your own expectations and biases. We all have them. I have them. You have them. The difference is, I'm not going on international television making accusations that destroy relationships and reputations based solely on my feelings about a situation. Feelings, Meghan repeated, her voice rising. You think being told that there were concerns about how dark my son's skin might be is a feeling? You think being denied mental health support when I was suicidal is a feeling? I think the skin color conversation, as you've described it, is troubling if it happened the way you say it did, Jon said carefully. But you've also been very vague about who said it, when they said it, what the exact context was. And Harry himself has walked back some of the characterization, saying it wasn't quite racism, it was unconscious bias, which is a very different thing. So which is it? Was it a racist comment, or was it unconscious bias? Because those are different accusations with different implications. Why does it matter? Meghan demanded. Why are you so focused on semantics instead of the fundamental issue that my child's race was being discussed as a potential problem? Because semantics matter when you're accusing people of racism, Jon replied immediately. Racism is a serious charge. It's not something you get to be vague about. If someone in that family is racist, name them. Tell us exactly what they said. Give us the context. Let people judge for themselves. But you can't drop a bomb like that and then refuse to provide details and still expect to be taken at face value. Meghan shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping. And if I name them, then I'm the one destroying the family. Then I'm the villain. I can't win here, Jon. That's the whole point. You can't win, or you don't want to deal with the consequences of your accusations. Jon challenged, because from where I'm sitting, you've been very strategic about what you reveal and what you keep hidden. You tell us enough to make us outraged on your behalf, but not enough that anyone can actually verify or challenge the specifics. That's not being silenced. That's being calculated. The audience gasped. This had crossed into territory that no one had anticipated. Meghan's face was flushed now, her breathing slightly elevated. You have no idea what you're talking about, she said, her voice low and tight. "You have no idea what it's like to be trapped in a system that is designed to break you down, that takes away your passport, your keys, your identity." "The passport thing," Jon interjected. "I read about that, but isn't it standard protocol that, when you join the royal family, your travel documents are held centrally for security purposes, that it's not personal, it's procedure?" And in several other members of the family confirmed that's how it works for everyone. "It's not the same," Meghan insisted. "The way it was done to me, the way I was isolated." "But it is the same procedure," Jon pressed. "That's my point. You keep taking things that are standard operating procedure and presenting them as personal attacks. The family has rules. Lots of rules. Archaic, outdated, sometimes ridiculous rules, I'll grant you that, but they apply to everyone. Kate had to follow them. Diana had to follow them. Everyone who marries into that family has to navigate the same system. Why is it that when you had to follow the rules, it was oppression, but when others did it, it was just part of the job?" Meghan leaned forward, her voice sharp. "Because I was treated differently, Jon. Whether you want to acknowledge it or not, I was treated differently because of who I am, because of my race, because of where I came from, because I didn't fit their narrow definition of what a royal should be." "Or," Jon said slowly, "and I'm just offering another perspective here, you were treated differently because you behaved differently, because you came in wanting to change everything immediately, because you didn't want to learn the system before trying to revolutionize it, because, and I'm going to be blunt here, you might not have been as easy to work with as you've portrayed yourself to be." The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Meghan stared at him, her mouth slightly open in disbelief. "Excuse me," she finally said. "I've talked to people," Jon continued, and now his voice was gentler but no less direct. "Not palace sources, not royal correspondents, people who worked with you before the royal family. People from your acting days, from Suits, from various projects. And there's a pattern, Meghan. A pattern of difficult behavior, of staff turning over, of people being blamed when things don't go your way. Now, maybe all of those people are lying. Maybe there's a massive conspiracy against you that predates your time in the royal family. Or maybe, and this is worth considering, maybe you're someone who is very talented, very ambitious, very driven, but also very difficult when you don't get what you want." Meghan's hands were trembling now. "I cannot believe you're doing this. I cannot believe you brought me here to ambush me with gossip and lies from people who have agendas. It's not an ambush if I'm asking questions that anyone paying attention has been wondering about," Jon said. "And it's not gossip when multiple independent sources over multiple years in multiple contexts tell similar stories. At some point, we have to at least consider that there might be some truth there." "No," Meghan said firmly, standing up from her chair. "No, we don't, because this is exactly what happens. This is exactly how women, especially women of color, get torn down. You find people willing to say negative things, you amplify those voices, and you use them to discredit everything that person says. It's a tale as old as time, and I'm not going to sit here and participate in it." Jon stood as well, matching her energy. "Meghan, sit down. We're not done here." "I think we are," she said, already reaching for her microphone pack. "Running away?" Jon asked, and there was an edge of frustration in his voice now. "You came on this show knowing I wasn't going to just let you repeat your talking points. You knew this was going to be a real conversation, and the first time it gets uncomfortable, you're going to walk out." "This isn't uncomfortable, Jon. This is disrespectful. This is you using your platform to pile on with everyone else who has decided that I'm the problem, that I'm the liar, that I'm the difficult one. Well, I don't have to subject myself to this, and I won't." The audience was frozen, watching this unfold in real time. Some people looked shocked, others sympathetic, others seemed to be nodding along with Jon's questions. "Before you go," Jon said, his voice cutting through the tension, "answer me one question. Just one, and then, if you want to leave, I won't stop you." Meghan paused, her hand on the microphone pack. "What? Do you take any responsibility for how things went wrong?" Jon asked simply. "Any at all? Or, in your version of events, are you completely blameless, and everyone else, the entire royal family, the staff, the media, the public, who doesn't buy your story, are we all just wrong?" Meghan turned back to face him fully, her expression a mixture of anger and something else, something that might have been hurt. "That question is insulting on multiple levels. And the fact that you think it's reasonable shows exactly why I need to leave. It's insulting to ask someone to reflect on their own role in a conflict. Jon pressed, that's basic human interaction. Meghan, when relationships fall apart, both sides usually bear some responsibility. But every time I've heard you talk about this, it's always what they did to you. Never what you might have done differently. Never an acknowledgement that maybe you made mistakes too. Of course I made mistakes, Meghan said, her voice rising. I was navigating an impossible situation with no training, no support, and a family that saw me as a problem to be managed rather than a person to be protected. Did I do everything perfectly? No. But my mistakes were human errors in judgment, not character flaws. Their mistakes were systematic, institutional, and yes, rooted in bias. Jon walked around the desk now, closing some of the physical distance between them, but keeping his tone measured. Okay, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the support issue. You've said repeatedly that you asked for help with your mental health and were denied. But there are reports that you were offered access to resources, that the palace has therapists and counselors available to the family, and that you declined because you wanted to seek outside help and were told that outside therapists would require signing non-disclosure agreements for security purposes. Is that not true? Meghan's eyes narrowed. Where are you getting this information? Does it matter where I'm getting it, if it's accurate? Jon countered. Did the palace offer you internal resources? Internal resources that were controlled by the same institution that was causing my pain, Meghan shot back. How is that help? That's like asking your abuser to provide your therapy. It's absurd. So you were offered help. You just didn't want the help that was available, Jon clarified. That's very different from being denied help entirely. You're twisting this, Meghan said, her voice strained. You're taking a complicated situation and reducing it to make me look unreasonable. I'm not twisting anything. I'm asking for clarity, Jon said. Because you told Oprah, you told the world, that when you went to the institution, when you went to human resources, they said no, you couldn't get help. It wouldn't be good for the institution. Those were your words. But if what actually happened was they offered you help within their system and you wanted outside help with different terms, that's a completely different story. One is cruel neglect, the other is a security disagreement. Meghan took a step back, creating distance. I'm done explaining myself to you. I'm done justifying my pain to people who weren't there and who have already decided I'm lying. I haven't decided you're lying, Jon said, his voice softer now, but still firm. I've decided that your version of events is incomplete at best and strategically edited at worst. There's a difference. And here's the thing that really bothers me about all of this. You've built an entire post-royal career on being the victim of this institution. The deals with Netflix, with Spotify, the book deals, the speeches, all of it is predicated on you being the wronged party. You have a financial incentive to maintain this narrative. How dare you, Meghan breathed, her face flushed. How dare you suggest that I would exploit my trauma for money? I'm not suggesting you're exploiting trauma, Jon clarified. I'm suggesting that you found a way to monetize your grievances and that colors everything. When your income depends on people believing you were wronged, you have a vested interest in never acknowledging any complexity or nuance. You have to stay the victim because the victim is your brand now. The words landed like a slap. Several audience members gasped audibly. Meghan's publicist, standing off stage, was frantically gesturing to cut to commercial. But Jon and Meghan were locked in this moment, neither willing to break first. My brand, Meghan repeated slowly, is authenticity. It's speaking truth to power. It's standing up for myself and for others who don't have a voice. But you do have a voice, Jon pointed out. You have one of the biggest voices in the world. You can call Oprah, you can call Gayle King, you can go on Ellen, you can sit down with any sympathetic interviewer you want, and they'll let you say whatever you want without pushback. The only time you face real questions is when you accidentally end up in front of someone who isn't already in your corner. And then this happens. You shut down, you claim victimhood again, and you leave. Maybe I leave because I recognize a setup when I see one. You invited me here under false pretenses. You made it seem like this would be a balanced conversation about my work, my advocacy, my life moving forward. Instead, you've spent this entire time trying to poke holes in my story like you're some kind of prosecutor. I'm a comedian and a journalist, Jon said. It's literally my job to ask questions. And if your story can't withstand questions, if it falls apart the moment someone asks for specifics or points out inconsistencies, then maybe the problem isn't the questions. Maybe the problem is the story. Meghan removed her microphone pack completely now, holding it in her hand. "I think we're done here, Jon. I really do." "One more thing," Jon said, and there was something almost pleading in his tone now. "Just one more thing, and then I'll let you go." Meghan waited, her body language screaming that she was ready to bolt. "Why, Harry?" Jon asked, his voice quiet now. "Of all the questions I have, that's the one I keep coming back to. You had a successful career. You had independence. You had your own money, your own life. Why marry into a family, in a system that you clearly were never going to be happy in? What did you think was going to happen?" For the first time in the entire interview, Meghan seemed genuinely at a loss. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "I loved him," she finally said, and her voice was smaller now. "I love him. I believe that," Jon said gently. "I do. But love doesn't explain why you thought you could change an institution that's been operating the same way for centuries. It doesn't explain why you expected them to rewrite their rules for you. And it doesn't explain why, when they didn't, you decided to burn it all down on your way out." "I didn't burn anything down," Meghan said, but there was less conviction in her voice now. "I told my truth." "You told the truth," Jon corrected. "Your truth. From your perspective, with your biases and your hurts and your interpretation of events, and that's valid. It's your experience. But you've presented it as the only truth, the objective truth. And anyone who questions it or offers a different perspective is immediately labeled as racist or complicit or part of the problem. That's not seeking justice, Meghan. That's seeking validation." The silence that followed was deafening. Meghan stood there, microphone pack in hand. Tears now visible in her eyes, though she was clearly fighting to keep them from falling. "I came here in good faith," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought you were different." "I am different," Jon said. "I'm treating you like I'd treat any other public figure, who makes serious accusations and then gets defensive when asked to back them up. That's not bias against you, that's equality. You want to be taken seriously? Then you have to be willing to be seriously questioned." Meghan shook her head slowly, then turned and walked toward the stage exit. The audience didn't know whether to applaud, boo, or sit in stunned silence. They chose silence. Jon watched her go, then turned back to the camera. "Well, that went about as well as expected. Look, I know some of you think I was too hard on her. Some of you think I wasn't hard enough. But here's the deal. When someone uses their platform to make accusations that affect real people, that damage real relationships, that influence millions of people's perceptions, they don't get to hide behind victimhood when questioned. They just don't." He paused, running a hand through his hair. "And before anyone accuses me of being anti-Meghan or pro-monarchy or whatever, I'm neither. I'm pro-truth. Or at least pro-trying to figure out what the truth is in a situation where everyone has an agenda. And everyone has something to gain from their version being believed. Maybe Meghan is telling the complete truth. Maybe the royal family is as terrible as she says. But maybe, just maybe, the reality is more complicated than either side wants to admit." The camera pulled back slowly as Jon returned to his desk, the empty chair across from him a stark reminder of how the conversation had ended. The stage manager was still trying to figure out if they should cut or keep rolling. Jon looked directly into the camera one last time. If you made it this far, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. What do you think? Was Meghan right to walk out? Or should she have stayed and answered the questions? Let me know, because something tells me we're all going to be talking about this one for a while.